Welcome to EXO Fleet's Insights, where every mile counts. The podcast where fleet data turns into real-world decisions. Each episode, we unpack what's really happening across mixed fleets, fuels and sites, and how better insights leads to better performance, lower costs, and fewer surprises on the road. So let's get into it.
The cost implication by getting it wrong was up to 20 or 30% from your capital cost budget. That by taking the time, doing a pilot, checking that it's working and rolling it out was the most effective way. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And just in some real cases, we have worked with operators that, to mitigate that range anxiety, have put in more batteries, as we were just describing, that 20 to 30% increase in capital costs, but there's two things with that. So one, when we actually look at the data, once the vehicles are deployed and in that kind of pilot sense, and we see how they're being utilized, more often than not, we find that they're never using that extra 20 to 30%. So it's basically just bought in there. So then the question becomes, what other use cases or routes can we put the vehicles on to stretch that and better utilize the capital that you deployed? So that's the first thing. The second thing, which really has a cost impact and isn't getting more on the operating side, when you have bigger systems of bigger chargers, bigger electrical service, in not every case, but in most cases, grid operators will charge you for the luxury of having dedicated capacity. They'll charge you for what you're consuming on the back end of that. So by having, a bigger system there, basically it means you're not just paying upfront for that kind of premium to have that luxury to have the assurance you've got what you need every day, which maybe you need, but in some cases we find you don't. But then you're also paying on the operating side a fixed cost to have that in perpetuity. So when we come into projects like that, it's just, okay, how can we better utilize what we have and then help educate how we can better design the next phase to avoid, pitfalls like that.
I think that's a recurring theme, this just in case hardware rather than just in time. And we know that you're paying a premium for that just in case scenario. That leads us on to the question, when you're selecting hardware, important to say we don't sell hardware here at Zero Emission, so we've no skin in that game. But if you were selecting the correct hardware, because again, we've seen people buy incorrect hardware, what are the key features that you should be looking out for?
The thing I always like to coach clients on is that not every OEM is created equal in the sense that they all make chargers, but not every charger is built for your purpose. So if you're working in a high utilization, high uptime, needing very high reliability environment, you can't work with every charger provider. Some providers just make equipment that needs to go, strapped into the back of someone's home, for example, and that's not something I'd recommend putting into your site or your yard or your depot. So it's really just in simple terms, identifying the right partners that are building products for your purpose. And it's not just the hardware functionality, but also the service and support that they can put behind that. So one of the encouraging trends that we're seeing now in the industry are very big companies that are coming out of the solar renewable space, inverter manufacturers now coming in and making chargers. And I think they're introducing just a kind of a new benchmark for performance on that side. And it's becoming much more favorable to light, medium, and heavy vehicle operators. So that's the first thing, they're aligned with the right partner. The second thing is that even underneath that, if you pick the right partner, there's usually a wide degree of configurations that you can have of chargers. So we were talking earlier, level 2, level 3, plugs or not plugs. So it really just depends, again, going back to the vehicle side, what the vehicle will support and then what your operation actually needs to get it to the right design. But there's a lot of, particularly on the level 3 side, if that's what is needed for the operation, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of having maybe a charger that has a few dispensers and then you can use the software to manage the capacity. That opens up a lot of potential cost savings on the capital side as you're buying less chargers. So that's the second thing, is making sure that within whomever you pick, they have an architecture that supports what you need and that is thoughtfully input into your design. And then the third thing is standardization. And I can't overstress this, really needing to encourage folks to just consider not working with proprietary systems, working with hardware OEMs that participate in standards discussions, supporting things like the Open Charge Point Protocol, OCPP, For those that know about that, that's, what allows third-party software and hardware to communicate. This is a rapidly evolving space. The technology is changing quickly. The players in the industry are changing quickly. So, you just want to avoid any potential vendor lock-in situations. And by having hardware that's built on open standards allows you to have flexibility as you work on the operating side to, to manage your system going forward. So again, pick the right partner, make sure they've got the system that you need and can build that into your design, and make sure that it's built on a robust open source framework.
If anything you heard today reflects the challenges you're facing in your fleet, get in touch with us today at Exofleets. We're always happy to talk through real-world solutions. exofleets.com